Cheating spouse! At times like this, I almost always think back to my time in the desert. I suppose that makes sense, considering I'm looking at my target through a scope. Only now my target isn't a terrorist or even a criminal. In fact, in this case, the criminal is me. My target is a balding, sweaty, slightly overweight banker at this very moment plowing the field of one of his subordinates from the bank. Why do I have him in my sights? Well, because I have a contract to end his life. Someone, and I have no idea who exactly, ordered this man's murder, paid in cryptocurrency, and it was organized through the darknet. I will never meet the person who placed the order, and I have no ties to the subject or his mistress. By the time law enforcement gets the alert, I'm gone, and I'm very careful to leave no trace that could point to me. I watch through the scope for a while longer. I am not a voyeur, but I am required to find an opportunity to shoot. For various reasons, I can't shoot while they're on the case, as they say, but usually when the guy is done, he either rolls over on the bed or stands up. That's usually the signal for me. I cranked up the scope a bit, looking at the part of the room I could see through the window. No one else besides the copulating couple. I looked at her. She's a pretty good prize. The contract states that she is not to be harmed, and she will not be harmed. At least not physically. I can't predict the effect on her psyche of seeing her lover's head explode as he goes to the bathroom to take a piss. I looked around for a second. There's no point in obsessing over a target so much that I myself am endangered. I don't have a spotter or cover. It's just me here, so I have to make sure my position is secure. And it is. I'm on the roof of the building across the street from the hotel where the cheating woman lives. I return to the scope and see that it's close to completion. I adjust again, checking that nothing has changed in the conditions, and that's when he arches his back, screaming out his climax. He shudders once, twice, 3 times, and freezes, then gets off her. As expected, he heads for the bathroom. I pull the trigger. I'm gone before she even starts screaming, and by the time law enforcement is around, I'm miles away. I put my gear in one of the several storage units I have around town, each in a different name and prepaid in cash, before heading home. During the drive, I reflect again on how I ended up here. How come I'm now a hitman specializing almost exclusively in eliminating cheating spouses? Well, the shooting part is easy. I've always been good with a rifle. From early childhood hunting on the farm, I developed an affinity for guns, especially rifles, which meant I could make shots that hit everyone else. This is almost instinctual. When I enlisted in the Marines and then sniper school, we were taught all sorts of trajectories, wind resistance, ballistics, and other science. I learned all that stuff, but I just didn't need it. I can make a shot by eye that a lot of snipers can't make even with all their calculations and computers. It's just a natural, instinctive ability. There is no doubt that I would have had great success in the Marines, but then something happened that changed my life forever, and is the reason I started specializing in cheating spouses. You guessed it. Cheating spouse. Gabrielle is a girl of French descent, a petite, dark-haired woman we met at a bar in town while on vacation. She is lively and attractive, and her body brings to mind all sorts of impure thoughts. She spent the entire evening with us, and both myself and my best friend Bobby took turns dancing with her. By the end of the evening, it was obvious that there was something between her and Bobby, and with a bitter chuckle, I did the only thing my best friend could do. I wished him luck and went back to the base alone. After that, every time out on the town after that, they were inseparable. I would either start the evening as the third extra, trying to find my own company as the evening progressed, or sometimes she would bring a friend to keep me company while she and Bobby entertained each other. I was surprised when, after 3 months of dating, Bobby came to me to show me the ring he had bought for her. "Wow, Bobby," I said, "that's some rock. Are you sure you're ready for this?" He grinned. "When you know," he said, adopting the pose of an old wise man. "I'm not going to let her get away." The look in her eyes when Bobby got down on one knee at the bar that night made me wonder. I expected her to be excited and happy, but calculation flashed across her face before she showed the expected emotion. I didn't say anything to Bobby, because I didn't want to ruin his moment, but I wondered. I had organized the bachelor party since I was the best man, and although those are my words, it was epic. All the ingredients were there, All three Bs were present. The bros, half the platoon showed up, the booze. We had to put Bobby back in his bunk that night, and he barely remembered anything about it. And the broads. Of course, there were strippers. That's a must. However, I did my best to protect Bobby's virtue and made sure nothing untoward happened to him. When organizing the party, I talked to Gabrielle beforehand to find out her boundaries. If she said no women, there wouldn't be any. I didn't want Bobby to get divorced before the wedding. The wedding was small. Her parents, a few of her girlfriends, and a few guys from our platoon. I was, as I said, best man. 2 months later, we were sent out into the desert again for a 3-month tour of duty. That patrol I will remember for the rest of my life. We were assigned to search a village where we knew there might be rebels. I and my spotter had already scouted and found a place where I could provide surveillance on the boys. The situation wasn't ideal as I still couldn't see some places, but this was the best option. Bobby had been out of sorts all day. He seemed overly eager to get there and was curt with everyone, even me, which was unusual. When I asked him what the problem was, he just grinned and said he was just anxious to get on the road. From that patrol, Bobby never came back. I didn't see what happened, as his position was out of view from my observation post. But his team told me that when they made contact with the enemy, Bobby stood up, yelled something like, "Go, motherfuckers!" and rushed toward them, firing from the hip with his M16 like some James Cagney gangster. He didn't even run 3 meters. I, as his best friend, was tasked with packing up his belongings to send to the U.S., and that's when I found the letter. Dear Bobby, I know this is the way of the coward, but I need to tell you that I have been seeing someone else and we have fallen in love. I am leaving you so that he and I can be together. I want you to know that I really loved you, but the time we spent apart has shown me that I'm not truly in love with you and you deserve more than that. So it's better if we break up and you can find someone who will love you as much as you deserve. Please don't think too badly of me. John says you have another month of touring left, so by the time you get back, I'll have moved out of our house. I'm not going to demand anything from you in the divorce and will be happy to consider you a friend if you can find it in your heart to forgive me. With best wishes, Gabriel. Damn fool! I shouted after reading the letter. I now understood Bobby's behavior and decided that payback was bound to come. I was assigned to escort Bobby's body back to the U.S., which interrupted my tour. We unloaded the casket and Gabrielle walked up to it, tears streaming down her face. She put her hand on the coffin and I said, "Don't you dare, you fool, you traitorous rotter." She stepped back stunned, and then I noticed the officer accompanying her, Colonel John Edwards. "What the hell?" he began, putting his arm around her shoulders. "How dare you?" "How dare I said. That treacherous Dura planted a Dear John letter on an active duty soldier right before patrol. What did she think was going to happen? When I find out who this low-life scum she's with..." "Stand down, Marine," Colonel Edwards growled. "I didn't know she'd sent him a letter. I told her to wait, and we..." "You?" I asked incredulously. "You were dating the wife of one of your subordinates?" "It was just..." he began. My first punch hit him in the throat, bringing him to his knees. A kick to the groin knocked him to the ground, and I punched him 4 more times in the face as he lay on the ground before the cops got to me. My greatest satisfaction was that we were both court-martialed, him for inappropriate behavior and me for hitting a superior officer. I spent a year in a military prison for assault, after which I was dishonorably discharged, and he was simply kicked out of the service and stripped of his pension. It took me another year to find her. She had moved to Canada and was living with a French-Canadian businessman. I had no idea what happened to Colonel Edwards. He got lost on the way. I was thinking of just shooting her from a distance. It's so easy. No guards, no surveillance. A simple woman in public is like fishing in a barrel. But then she'd never know what killed her or why. I needed it to be more personal, needed her to understand who killed her and why. In the end, she made it easy for me. She was at the dance with her friends. Apparently, she was still cheating, since the guy who was currently running his tongue down her throat was not her French-Canadian businessman. I watched from the bar as he whispered something in her ear. She nodded, and they moved toward the exit. I walked out the front door and around the bar. I guessed where they were going and wasn't disappointed when I saw them heading towards the SUV in the parking lot. I waited by my car to see if they were going anywhere. But when he opened the back door of the SUV, I knew it would be here and now. Looking around to see if anyone was around or following, I moved closer until I saw Gabriel, or rather, Gabriel's ass sticking out the back door and the guy pushing into her, bending her over the car seat. The guy I didn't want to kill, I have no beef with him, so I quickly choked him and he fell unconscious to the floor. It took Gabrielle a few seconds to realize it had stopped. She got out of the car and turned to face me, looking down the barrel of my Glock 9. Her eyes widened as she recognized me, and she opened her mouth to speak. I beat her to it. "Bobby says, 'Hi, stupid!'" I pulled the trigger twice, putting 2 bullets into her chest, and she was thrown backwards into the car. I was gone before the sounds of gunfire even reached the bar, and less than 4 hours later, I was back across the border into the United States. Revenge for Bobby got me thinking. Surely there must be some number of people who are being cheated on at this minute. Some of them will want to reconcile, others will want a divorce. But there will also be those who want a more permanent solution to a cheating spouse, and I have the skills to accomplish that. And so I became a hitman, specifically one who attacks those who step outside of their marriage. It's an easy job. In general, these are ordinary people. They have little or no knowledge that they are targets and no personal protection. I had been plying my trade for about 4 years and was making quite a bit of money when I met Juliana. Juliana is the finance manager at the car dealership I visited when I wished to buy a new car. She is bright, intelligent, and an interesting conversationalist. It didn't hurt that she's almost 6 feet tall with heels, legs that last for miles, long blue-black hair, and an ass to die for. We instantly hit it off, and within half an hour she had agreed to go on a date with me. I won't bore you with the dance that was courtship. Suffice it to say that a year and a half later, Juliana and I were married in a lavish wedding with over 200 guests, consisting of her friends and family, my parents, and a few of my old Navy buddies still in touch with me. To the world and Julianne, I was a successful money manager, spending most of my working hours in front of a computer at home, but traveling around the country on a regular basis by necessity. This is the perfect cover for my real job. Life with Juliana has been good. She supported my money management work even when I had to go away on business. She always greeted my return with sessions in the bedroom where she was wild and uninhibited. Even when I was home, we made love at least 4 or 5 times a week, and sometimes much more often. She never went out with the girls, although she had many girlfriends. It was always just the 2 of us. If going to a dance, she accepted, with my blessing, dance invitations from other men, but always ensured that their behavior, like hers, was consistent with her husband's. I never once doubted that she loved me as I loved her. Contracts came through the darknet, and accepting them made me paranoid. Never met in person, dealt only online, demanded irrefutable proof of infidelity, and they never knew when or where the contract would be honored. Money was deposited into a virtual account with a ban, and was only released after the contract was fulfilled. The money could be returned by me to the client if for some reason I couldn't fulfill the contract, but so far that had never happened. Since I had no ties to any of the victims, law enforcement never got close to me, and since I used cryptocurrency, even if it could be proven that the person contracted had paid a lump sum, her whereabouts were perfectly safe. I killed far more men than women at about a 10-to-1 ratio. When a man cheats on a woman, she wishes him dead, and when a woman cheats on a man, more often than not, he wishes the man she cheated on him with dead. Of course, there have been exceptions, but I have no conscience. It's a job. People are willing to pay me and pay me well for my services, and cheaters deserve everything they get. So life went on. After 3 years of marriage, Juliana and I had our first child, and just 18 months later, our second child. They were raised in a good, stable family and are now both attending college, which is fully paid for. Juliana was feeling a bit of an empty nest and went back to work at the car dealership. I worked from home most of the day, with occasional outings. I decided that I would retire. 1 or 2 more contracts would complete the retirement fund I was building, and frankly, I was getting tired of the game. I looked at the bulletin board I was using to find a job and saw that there were 2 contracts available. one in a neighboring state and one on the other side of the country. I decided that paying off the local contract would get me over the hump, so I clicked on the job openings to start the process of getting a contract. The target was a man named Peter Miller. A photograph was attached. The file indicated that he is a seller of group insurance that covers 3 states, including ours, and that he travels extensively in his region. He is married to Janine, and they have 3 young children, Paul, Mary, and Siobhan. I have private investigator reports showing his affairs with 4 different women. He is currently on the road, and his route has taken him within 50 miles of where I live. He is going to stay in a hotel for a week. There is no information that he has a woman, but it is assumed that he has one and that they will meet during his stay. The contract stipulates that his hotel will be monitored, and if he shows up with a woman who is not his wife, to keep an eye on him at all times. Attached to the contract were pictures of the man himself, his wife, and 3 children. I always wonder why pictures of the children are attached, but they always are. Whoever compiled the dossier did a good job. It was known not only what hotel he was staying at, but what room he was staying in. I Googled the hotel and found that the room he had booked was on the 5th floor on the east side. A quick glance at Google Earth showed that, albeit not on the block across the street, there was construction going on across the block. If I can get to a high enough floor of this unfinished building, I will have an unobstructed view of the east side of the hotel, since the buildings directly across the street from the hotel are only 3 stories high. I have to go on a business trip next week, I told Juliana on Friday evening. I'll leave Monday morning and be back Thursday, possibly Friday. She looked up from the book she was reading. I thought you were done with them already, she said, not complaining, just asking. This one might be the last one, depending on how things go. Maybe there'll be another one if this one doesn't live up to expectations. She nodded, then grinned. That means we'll have the whole weekend together, she said. We didn't spend the whole weekend in bed. After a terrific Friday night, we went out on Saturday, did a few mundane things, and then had dinner at our favorite restaurant. Saturday night and most of Sunday, however, we spent Saturday night and most of Sunday in bed. Monday morning, I left the house and drove my car to the airport. Once parked, I walked about a mile to a warehouse nearby and climbed into an inconspicuous car I kept there for that purpose. It is a gray Toyota sedan, immediately forgettable. It is registered to a fake ID that was secure enough to pass a police check, but a deep check would not have stood up to scrutiny. I was in position on the 7th floor of the construction site, aiming the scope at his window, when the target entered the room. He fiddled around for a few minutes and then picked up the phone, obviously making a call. After a brief conversation, he left the room. It was a little after 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't follow him, knew he'd be back, and positioned myself to wait. For some reason, the construction site was closed, so I had no fear of being discovered. By the time he returned to his room, it was past 6 in the evening. In an obvious hurry, he made his way to the bathroom to take a shower. I watched him as he went back to the bedroom. Nothing much. The shower water must have been cold because there was nothing much to see between his legs and his body, though lean was not particularly inspiring. I often wondered what attracted women to men like that, and decided that he must have had a good tongue in chat room chat, because it certainly wasn't about his physical attributes. After another 30 minutes, he got dressed and went out. I ate and sat down to wait for his return. Was sure he would be back, and probably with some woman. I would take a picture to prove his infidelity and then put a bullet in his skull. The contract says nothing about killing or sparing the woman, so I won't kill her. Although I don't mind killing cheating women, I didn't know this woman was a cheater. She is probably just a lonely girl who fell for this jerk. I have no information, and she'll stay alive. It was past midnight when the lights finally came back on in the room, and I looked through the scope again. I saw my target enter the room with a tall, dark-haired woman. As soon as they passed through the door, the woman pressed him against the door and fell to her knees in front of him. I couldn't see exactly what was going on since her back was to me, and I could see him from the torso down due to my position a couple floors above them, but I wasn't worried. Eventually, they would move further into the room. I could see her head moving back and forth, and after a couple minutes he put his hands on the back of her head and started moving his hips. It took less than 5 minutes for him to tense up and obviously release his load. Still locked together, they began to remove the rest of their clothes, moving toward the bed. When they reached the bed, she was left in her underwear, and he was naked. He pushed her back onto the bed and started kissing her body. At that moment, it took all my self-control not to pull the trigger. Instead, I clicked the camera that was linked to my scope and took a digital picture. For the next 3 hours, I shot photos and videos of the couple while they were in the bedroom. Finally, satiated, they settled into bed for one last session of lovemaking before falling asleep for the night. As the lights went out, I sat leaning back in my chair, my heart pounding and my thoughts racing. I opened the picture I took first through the scope on my phone and looked at it. I zoomed in on that face, looking into those eyes, those beautiful eyes, the eyes of my wife, Juliana. My mind was racing with thoughts. I couldn't complete the murder now. One of the safest things about what I was doing was that I wasn't connected to the victims or their partners. If I killed either or both of them now, the first person the police would want to talk to would be me. My alibi won't stand up to that kind of scrutiny. Besides, I'm in no condition to decide what to do about Juliana. I was so angry now that I could have put a bullet in her without thinking, but I knew that anger would pass, and I had to think not only about myself, but also about my children. I have to think long and hard about what to do with her. I will have to live with my decision for the rest of my life. Another thought was that if I returned the contract, someone else might pick it up and be less picky about whether or not to kill the asshole's partner. I also had to consider if this was a setup. Didn't someone set it up so I would see my wife cheating with this asshole to try to drain me? I didn't think it was law enforcement. They wouldn't have put any of them on my radar, since for all they know I could have fired tonight, but there could be someone else involved. Possibly someone connected to one of my previous contracts who wants revenge. No, I need to fulfill this contract, but make it look accidental or natural. No follow-up from the police so we don't get hurt. I'll deal with Juliana later. I've packed up all my belongings and taken them into storage. I won't be using them for this job. While I was in storage, I picked up a few extra electronic devices, and when I got back to the hotel, I found both of their cars and installed a GPS tracker on them. The next morning, after they both left, Juliana returned to my house and he went to do what he was supposed to do here. I entered the hotel and using an electronic key card, I broke into his room. I searched the room, finding nothing unexpected. In his luggage were a few blood pressure medications and some Viagra. Then I installed some hidden cameras. I have 4 days to fulfill the contract. Since I told Juliana I wouldn't be back until Thursday or Friday, I didn't need to communicate with her too much, although I knew she would call me today. I also booked a hotel room using my fake ID. Things would be easier if I was in the hotel legally. I looked around and found that the security cameras were only installed at the entrance and elevators. There are none on the stairs or in the hallways outside the rooms. Throughout the day, I watched their movements while making my own preparations. Juliana was at work, then went to the gym, then came home. After a while, his beacon showed him heading towards my house, and I swore to myself that if she let that asshole into my house, I would kill them both on principle, and I didn't care about the consequences. Thankfully, he didn't drive any closer than 5 blocks to my house. Just after 6 p.m., Juliana called me. "Hi, baby," she said. "Hi, honey, I missed you last night. I thought you were going to call." "Sorry, I fell asleep in front of the TV, and when I woke up it was late," she said without the slightest pause. "That's what I thought. That's why I didn't bother you," I said, clenching my fist. It was the first time Juliana had ever lied to me. Obviously, there were others, but I just didn't know about them. "How are things going with your meeting?" she asked. There was an unexpected complication. Someone unexpectedly showed up at the meeting, and it raised some questions. I am confident that I will be able to close the deal, but it may take a little longer and be a little more complicated. However, once it's done, I won't be traveling anymore, I said. "So you'll be back on Friday instead of Thursday?" I could have sworn I heard a smile in her voice. "You don't sound too disappointed," I replied rather caustically. "Oh, no, not at all. I was just glad when you said this was your last business trip. If an extra day on this one means it's the last, it's worth it," she said. Reacting well, stupid, I thought, but instead I asked, "So what are you doing tonight?" I just got back from the gym, so I'm going to hang out in front of the TV, she said, and go to bed early. I have to work too. Well, remember what my mom always told me? I joked. If you're not in bed by 11, you have to go home. She laughed. I'll call you tomorrow night. I miss you. Good night. And I don't know if she noticed that I just hung up without saying anything further. The last call was to my friend. He's a chemist and sometimes supplies me when my preferred method of killing doesn't work. Sometimes people want it to look more natural. That usually drives up the price, but in this case, I'm willing to take a loss. By the time I got back to the hotel to see my friend, the asshole was back, and when I plugged in the camera, I heard his phone ringing. Hey, Jules, I heard him say and flinched. Juliana hated it when her name was shortened in any way. If it was her, and letting him call her Jules only made it worse. It was odd that little things like that mattered. The conversation continued. No, I got home late. Give me an hour to pack and I'll meet you downstairs. Say 7:30? Yeah, I look forward to it. I'm gonna make you squeal tonight. Make you forget that miserable asshole you married, he said gleefully. No, Juliana, he said. I didn't mean to. I know he didn't. Don't, baby, please. Julie. He looked at his phone. Shit, he shouted fiercely. I smiled grimly to myself. It sounded like he was losing a night of passion. My phone rang. It was Juliana. Hey, babe, what's up? I asked, surprised. Nothing, she said. I just remembered that I didn't tell you that I love you when we talked, and I just wanted to make sure you knew it. She sounded a little upset. Are you okay? I asked. You sound a little off. I'm fine, she replied. I just miss you, that's all. I heard her cell phone beep, saying there was a call. I looked at my computer and saw that asshole was talking on his phone and guessed it was him calling her. Why don't we have a little chat then? I said. It'll be almost like I'm there. I waited to see what decision she would make, to continue chatting with me or to go back to talking to the jerk so he could charm her into another night of love. She made the wrong decision. No, I'm just stupid. Look, my mom's trying to call me. I just wanted to tell you that I love you. Good night. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Good night, Jules. I hung up. I wondered if she'd noticed. Back in the asshole's room, I heard his phone ring and he smiled as he picked it up. Hey, babe. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I know you don't like it when I say mean things about him. It's just my insecurities. I just want to be a better lover to you and know that I make you feel as good as you make me feel. No, I won't. Okay, tomorrow then? How about I take you to dinner at Archie's? I'll make a reservation for 7. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I love you too, Julianne. Good night. I love you too? I thought. That meant she had confessed her love to him. Was it just a reflexive way to end the conversation, or does she actually love the asshole? I'll find out tomorrow. Shortly after that, I heard him call room service and order food and a couple beers. I decided it was time to make my move. I waited for the food to be brought to the room and for the hotel clerk to leave. Just as he sat down to eat, I knocked on his door. I stood back so he wouldn't see me through the peephole, but I don't think he even looked. He opened the door and looked at me. The surprise on his face as he stared down the barrel of my silenced Glock was priceless. Good evening, Peter, I said affably. May I come in? For a moment, his mouth worked soundlessly, but I moved forward and he instinctively backed away. The door closed behind me. What do you want? He asked. I've got about $500 in my wallet. You can take it and... It's nothing rude, I said. I just want to have a nice, friendly chat. You see my employer, I think you're familiar with her, it's your wife Janine, has asked me for some answers. And you, my fine friend, are going to give them to me. I already have a lot of information, but I also have gaps to fill in, so if you lie to me, I'll find out and shoot you. He went pale. I don't actually want to shoot you, I continued. It's so much like hard work, and your good wife would rather just divorce you and humiliate you. Financially, you're worth more to her alive than dead. And she thinks your kids will miss you if you die. But she wants to know the whole truth about your dirty deeds. Make no mistake. She will go after every one of the women you cheat with and tell their husbands what they have been up to. If you tell me everything completely and right now, I will leave this room without having to clean up your corpse. Sound reasonable? I took the bottle of beer, uncorked it, and handed it to him, while I uncorked the other and took a sip. I grimaced. Is this the best thing they make here? I asked. He looked at me, a glint of hope in his eyes. So if I tell you everything you want to know, you won't shoot me? He asked. I wouldn't. I'll walk away and let you get on with your life. I'd suggest you call your wife after I leave, and maybe if you grovel enough, she might even take you back if only for the sake of your children. I pointed to one of the chairs. He sat down. What do you want to know? He asked. There are 4 women about whom I know almost everything I need to know. I listed their names and where they live. His mouth dropped open. I also know that one woman lives here in town. I think her name is Juliana, and she works at a car dealership. He nodded. Your wife doesn't know much about her, so let's start with her. Tell me everything about Juliana, how you met her, how long you slept with her, everything. He started slowly but told his story, sipping the bottle of beer I handed him. He met Juliana about 4 months ago. He visited the car dealership where he sold his insurance and talked to her as a finance associate. She was beautiful, charming, with an absolutely stunning body, and he immediately decided he had to have her. Their meeting lasted most of the morning, and he invited her to lunch. He was surprised that she accepted so easily, and even more surprised when after lunch she suggested that he take her out to dinner that evening since her husband was out of town on business. They ended up going back to his hotel, and she gave him a night he would never forget. He started to describe what she did for him, but I interrupted him. I don't need that kind of detail. So, how often did you see Juliana? I asked. We met about 8 or 9 times. Every time her husband was away, she would call me, and if I could carve out time to come here, I would. I even canceled dates with my other girlfriends if she called. She's way better than any of them, he said with a smirk. He got carried away with his story and forgot about his situation for a moment. He drank the rest of his beer and looked at the empty bottle. Can I have another one? He asked, pointing to the minibar. Easy, I told him. It would be a shame if I had to shoot you over a misunderstanding. We seem to be getting a little closer. He grinned again and walked over to get himself another beer. Do you want one? He asked, and I shook my head. He went back to his seat. So, I said, you say Juliana did all the moves. Do you know if she did that a lot? I don't think so, but I'm sure I'm not her first. There was no guilt. She wouldn't let me say anything bad about her husband, even though today I screwed up and called him a jerk and she tore me to shreds. He laughed. Otherwise, she'd be here right now. It seems odd that she'd be upset about that, considering what she does, I said thoughtfully. She shares her life, he explained. In her mind, Juliana, who is a loving wife to her husband, I don't even know his name, she refuses to talk about him, is not the same Juliana who comes to bed with me. She sees nothing wrong with that, as they are 2 different people. I'm not sure her husband would see it that way, I said. Mentally, she may feel like 2 different people, but physically they are the same person. I take it you don't use protection? No, never. She says we don't need it. She says she's on the pill. What about STDs? I asked. Considering you're sleeping with half the country, she didn't even think about the possibility of bringing something nasty home to her husband? I'm not sure it even crossed her mind. I get tested regularly, though, and I'm clean, he said. That was small consolation, but I mentally noted that I should get tested anyway. Peter grimaced and put his hand to his chest. Is something wrong? I asked thoughtfully. Indigestion. I haven't eaten. And the beer... He rubbed his left hand absent-mindedly, then began to choke. His face turned purple and sweat began to roll down his face. He clutched his chest with both hands. Help me, he said. Peter, look at me, I said. He raised his head, his eyes were frightened. He was panting, and I could see he didn't have long to live. You should have stayed away from Juliana, I said. My wife. His eyes widened for a moment, and then rolled back as he passed out. It would take him another 10 or 15 minutes to die, and I used that time to make sure there was nothing in the room to indicate that anyone else was here but him. I turned on the TV, but softly, and rearranged the food in front of him that had been brought in from room service. When his body was found, it would turn out that he had just had a fatal heart attack while eating dinner and watching TV. Since he was already on blood pressure medication, I was sure that even if they did a full autopsy, they would find enough heart disease to explain the heart attack, especially since he was also taking Viagra, and that was definitely taboo. I examined him one more time and made sure he was in fact dead. Then, after checking that the hallway outside was clear, hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign on the doorknob and went back to my room. The next day, it was already 5:30 p.m. when Juliana called me. "Hey, baby, how was your day?" she asked cheerfully. "Great," I said. "I solved one of the outstanding issues, and I'm sure I can solve the last outstanding issue. Listen, I have an idea. Since this is my last business trip, why don't we fly to Mexico for the weekend? I can pick you up at the airport and we can celebrate the weekend and maybe even turn it into a longer vacation. I'm sure you're due for a vacation, but even if you're not, just say you're going. It's not like you need the job." I laughed. Juliana laughed too. "That sounds like a great idea. I'll talk to Barry tomorrow and see what he says. I'll call you tomorrow night and we can book the tickets." "Great," I said. "So what are you doing tonight?" "Same old thing. I've got some work to do and I'm going to watch Life. It's really good." "Isn't it about women having affairs?" I asked. "I hope you don't have any ideas like that." She laughed again. "He makes me horny for when I can get to you again," she said. I looked at the time, knowing she thought she had dinner reservations for 7, and it would take her at least 40 minutes to get there. "Look, babe, the oven just beeped, so my dinner's ready. I'll talk to you tomorrow, okay?" she said. "Okay, enjoy your dinner and cheat," I said. "Bye, baby. Love you," she said. I hung up the phone. At 8:30, I heard a knock on Peter's room door. No maids had entered the room since I put up the "Do Not Disturb" sign. So I guessed that Juliana had gone to the restaurant, waited, and came to see why he was late. The knocking was repeated. 20 minutes later, I heard the lock squeak and the door opened. A hotel clerk entered, followed by Juliana. When they saw Peter lying there with his face buried in the frozen remains of last night's dinner, the clerk rushed to him. Juliana stood in the doorway and watched what was happening. "Is he dead?" she asked. The hotel employee felt for a pulse, but it was quite obvious that he was dead. His body was motionless. "Yes, he's dead." Without a word, Juliana turned and left the room. By the time the clerk realized she had left, she was already in the elevator and out of the hotel. The police and ambulance were called, who, after rummaging through the room for a while, found his medication. The medics concluded that he had suffered a fatal heart attack, given his medical condition and the way they found him. Police spoke to a hotel employee who told them that they entered the room at the request of a woman who had come to visit the man, and they found him together. This woman he did not know but had seen her earlier in the week. She had come to visit him. However, the man had been to the hotel before and had several female visitors. The employee thought they might be escorts, but didn't say anything because the man tipped well and they were discreet. After everyone left, I went and got my surveillance equipment, packed it up, and left the hotel in the morning. In the parking lot, I removed the GPS tracker from Peter's car, which was still parked there. Saturday morning, I picked Juliana up from the airport and we drove to the villa I had rented. She squealed happily when she looked around and saw the private pool with lounge chairs and said, "I'm going to go and change." "Can we chat for a few minutes first, Jules?" I asked. She turned her head and looked at me. "You know I don't like it when you call me that," she said. "Why?" I asked. "You didn't seem to mind when Peter used it." She turned pale but decided to be cheeky. "Who's Peter?" "You know him? Peter, the insurance salesman? The guy you've been sleeping with for the last 4 months. The one you made love to Monday night when you said you were so tired you fell asleep and didn't call me," I said. "I don't know who you were talking to or what you heard, but—" She started. I put a 20x25 photo on the table between us. It was the same photo I had taken first, through the scope, of her lying on her back, her eyes dilated and her mouth in a perfect O. She lowered herself into the chair. "Oh," she said. "Oh?" I asked. "Is that all you got? Oh?" She shrugged. "How long has it been?" I asked. She looked at me with an even gaze. About 4 months. I take it he wasn't the first? Do you really want to do this? She asked. Do what? Find out the truth about his cheating wife? Insults? Really? Are you that juvenile? Then go ahead, get it out of your head, call me a slut. Maybe you can find something original to call me and impress me. But before you start, I'd like you to know something. And what's that? Why I did it, she said. I started to say that she did it because but then I stopped myself and told her to go on. We've been married a long time, haven't we? She asked, and I nodded. Can you tell me how many times a week on average we make love? She asked. I wondered. Well, it's gone down with age, I started, but she interrupted. Really? Yes, at first we did it every day, sometimes 2 or more times a day. But once we got over that youthful exuberance, we started making love at least every other day and sometimes more often. It was and still is wonderful. And you are still the best lover I've ever had. But then you started going away on business trips, sometimes for a month. I was used to getting love almost daily, and here you expected me to go weeks without it. I even bought toys, but it wasn't the same. It didn't fulfill my needs. One night I decided that since you weren't here and I couldn't get love, I would go to the gym and relieve the tension. I was so horny I probably attracted half the men. They were like dogs in heat. And yes, I ended up going home with one of them, found a way to fulfill the need that you had awakened in me. Oh yes, the next day I felt guilty, afraid you would find out, that you would be hurt and divorce me. When you came back from your trip, I practically loved you every day for a week, trying to make it up to you, make up for something you didn't even know about. Even then, I knew that the next time you left it would happen again, and it did. After a while, I decided to adopt a new normal, but I needed to set some safeguards in place, so I created a few rules. First, never did it when you were home. Not because I thought like you would catch me, but because you were always my first and best lover. I didn't need anyone else if you were here. Secondly, I never brought anyone else to our house. I would never show such disrespect to you with another man in your bed. For the same reason, I have never allowed any of my other lovers to disrespect you. Some men seem to enjoy denigrating the husbands whose wives they sleep with. If any of them started to speak ill of you, I stopped it, refused to see him again, and even kicked some of them out of bed for it. Thirdly, I was regularly tested for STDs. I didn't want to pass anything on to you. And before you say it, it wasn't just because that's how I could get caught. I didn't want to put you at that risk. I also made sure twice that I couldn't get pregnant. I used an IUD and had birth control implants. When we were ready to have children, I stopped that. I have copies of the children's DNA tests that you can read if you want proof. I knew you would probably find out and question the parentage of the children. And yes, that means I did it the whole time we were together. You turned me on so much, I just couldn't do without it. A day or two was fine, but more than that, I needed some relief. That's all it was. The scratching of an itch. I never had any feelings for any of them. They were toys in the flesh as far as I was concerned. The only man I've ever loved and been in love with was you. When you told me that this would be your last trip, I was beyond happy. I can finally have you home and to myself. I can stop looking for second-rate replacements. I won't need them because I will always have the best at home with me. My days of having to settle for second-rate will be over. It seems rather ironic that what may have been my last time with another man turned out to be the time I got caught. Your last time? I said. These pictures were taken on Monday. You said you couldn't do without love for more than 2 days. So do you really want me to believe like you didn't go out the other nights? How about Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? She laughed a little. On Tuesday, he called me to say he was back at the hotel, but he started talking bad about you, so I told him it was over between us and I wouldn't see him again. A little later, he called back to apologize. I forgave him, but told him I was done with him for that night and I would see him on Wednesday. He said he would take me out to dinner as an apology. So that call that went out on Tuesday when we were talking, I asked. It wasn't your mom? For the first time, she had the decency to look guilty. No, it wasn't, she said quietly. I hated lying to you. Not so much that you didn't, I said. Her eyes widened. Wait, during that phone call, you called me Jules. I remember it seemed weird to me. Did you know already then? She asked. The photos were sent to me Tuesday morning. They came with transcripts of previous calls. She sighed again. I'm so sorry you had to find out about this. It must have been awful. Let's not get sidetracked. You didn't sleep with him on Tuesday? What about the rest of the week? I asked. I wanted to know how his death had affected her. He was supposed to meet me for dinner on Wednesday, she began. You mean when you were supposed to be watching a show on TV? I asked with some irony. I did watch it, and it's good. I just didn't watch it that night. And no, it didn't give me any ideas. As silly as it sounds, and please don't get angry when I say this, in my mind, I wasn't cheating. I was just fulfilling a physical need. For me, it was like going out to lunch with a friend. I need to eat, and you're not around to keep me company, so I go with my friend. I know this may be hard for you to accept, but this is how I perceived, and to some extent still perceive what I did when I slept with other men. And mind you, I never said I was making love. I've never done it with anyone but you. You're stalling, I said flatly. Are you trying to avoid telling me what you did on Wednesday? Not at all, she said. Like I said, we were supposed to meet for dinner, but he never showed up. I sat in the restaurant for 45 minutes, and I have to say I was furious. I had never been set up before, so I decided to go to his hotel. When I got there, he didn't answer the door, but I knew he was at the hotel because his car was in the parking lot. I asked the manager to go inside, and we found him face down in the dinner steak, dead as nits. According to the medics, he was on blood pressure medication, but the stupid fool had also taken Viagra, which should never be done. He probably had a massive heart attack. At least he didn't die while he was making love to you, I said. That would have been much more embarrassing. Oh, hell, I never thought of that, she said. It would definitely have made a fuss. His poor wife would have found out about it. I think she already knew, I said. I suspect she's the one who sent me the pictures. Juliana nodded. At least I don't have to ask if you're going to see him again, I commented, and she smiled crookedly. I'm not going to apologize for what I did, she said. It was something I had to do, but I'm sorry that I hurt you and that you found out about it. I counted the days until you stopped going on business trips so I wouldn't have to do it anymore. But I knew that as long as you did, it would continue. All I could do was minimize any repercussions and hope that if you ever found out, your love for me would be strong enough for you to understand. Why didn't you come and talk to me? I asked. We could have worked something out. I could have done things differently, even taken you with me on trips. In the back of my mind, I knew that was nonsense. I could never take her with me, but I needed to understand. I didn't want to be that kind of wife, a nag who demands that you provide a high standard of living and then complain about how you do it. You love your job, and we had a wonderful life together. I didn't plan to do that. I kind of fell into it, and by then it was too late to take it all back. I stared at her for a long time, thinking. So, she said, what happens now? I got up, went to the kitchen of the villa, and opened a bottle of wine, pouring each of us a glass and returning the bottle to the table. I handed the glass to Juliana and sat back in my chair tiredly, drinking half of it in one gulp. I don't know, I said. It's just something to think about. We were together for so long, and I thought you loved me as much as I loved you. Yes, we had a great sex life, and yes, we made love often. But you weren't the only one who suffered when I left. I too went without love for weeks and even months. Yes, I had opportunities to dine out with other women when I was away, but I never did. Stayed true to our vows. I didn't even have toys. I had to rely on good old... I waved my hand. I don't understand how you can be so consumed with your need that you're willing to betray everything we have together, or the promises, our vows. For what? Just for love. Are you going to report a sex addiction? Do we need you to see a counselor? She opened her mouth. But I held up my hand. Please, I gave you permission to speak, but at least do me the courtesy of listening to me for a little while. I leaned toward her and refilled her glass, then filled mine. I have so many questions. How can you separate relationships and love so easily? Everything I've read says that's what men do, not women, that women need love. And if that's true, and you're not lying about there being no love, then that means you risked everything for a bad man. How do you think I feel? You also said you can't do without love for more than a couple days in a row. So what happens as you get older? It is well known that men slow down with age and some women have an increased sex drive with age. Is this what I should expect? Am I going to come home to find some stud deeply immersed in you when I can only get turned on twice a week because it won't be enough for you? How can I look at myself in the mirror every morning with any semblance of respect, knowing that our entire married life you've been tooting my horn with other men? There have been dozens, if not hundreds, over the years. Besides, you say you've been tested regularly, but what good is that? You could have gotten infected and passed it on before the test results came back. You could have passed anything to me, even HIV. That shit takes months to be detected. You could have killed us both. Where would our kids be then? Her face twitched, and she rubbed her left hand absently. I smiled softly at her. Peter was a piece of shit, I said. But I think he eventually developed feelings for you. He told me he was even canceling on other lovers when you called and said you were free. What? She said. When did you talk to Peter? Oh, he and I had a little talk the night he died. You see, I was a little upset to see you sleeping with that creep, and I thought I'd guarantee it wouldn't happen again. Her face was flushed now, and I could see the pain brewing in her chest. What did you do to him? She asked. The same thing I just did to you, I growled. I killed that cheating bastard. Say hi for me when you go to hell. The end.